Then it jumped up and down on the trunk, which bent the center of it and raised the edges around the outside a bit. Using this space to thrust its huge nails in, the beast tore open the car's trunk. Dude, start the fucking car. It then flung everything that had been inside, including the spare tire and tools, all over the side of the highway and in the road. By this time, Edith leaned over and was turning the ignition herself, now weeping so much that she could hardly see what she was doing. The creature stomped loudly on their car, down the windshield, down the hood, jumped on the ground, and turned to glare at us with hatred. Oh shit. Every year on Valentine's Day, Edith and I would have the kids gather by the fireplace and we would tell them the story of how our family was almost wiped out before it started by the Dogman. Although, this is a pretty fucking scary story. The kids look forward to it each year. For them, it was like a second Halloween. We weren't telling it solely to entertain them. Our intention was to give them the lesson of the importance of perseverance. But I think they just like getting the shit scared out of them. Anyway, the story happened way back when Edith and I were dating, before we'd gotten married. We were both teenagers and it was in the late 50s. Specifically, it was Thursday, February 14, 1957. I remember because that year, the full moon fell on Valentine's Day. You can look it up if you don't believe me. We celebrated Valentine's Day by doing what all the teenagers in the monster movies back then were doing. Driving around, we were trying to find a lover's lane that was secluded enough to have our own private observance of the holiday. Maybe those old movies were based on fact. Maybe monsters are somehow attracted to lovers' lanes. On the other hand, maybe cryptids are seen on lovers' lane for the simple reason that these places are, by definition, located far off the beaten track. Either way, we were driving around on dark roads, looking for a place we could park without attracting any attention. I would go into long, intricate detail describing what was wrong with each lover's lane we checked out. One had too many cars parked there. The next one had my friend's car parked there. The third had a police vehicle drive past and briefly set off its siren to get us to move on. We were driving further and further out of town and getting increasingly frustrated. Finally, Edith said that she was hungry and asked if we could stop to get something to eat. It was one of those places where ladies on roller skates would bring the food out to your car instead of you going inside. So a car hop. In the summer, they would attach the trays to the outside of your car window. But on this frigid night, they brought us the food in a brown paper bag. Classy. We were eating and listening to romantic songs on the radio. It was a night for young love, and we embodied the essence of the cultural era. We were the archetype of that moment in time. Yet, even with all that intense mythology on our side, in reality, we sat there sucking down shakes and wondering how we could find some damn privacy. While we were eating in the parking lot, we noticed mountains looming off in the distance, behind the fast food restaurant. On the highway, we decided to try to figure out how to get up in those mountains. there would certainly be some private spot up there that we could stop at and get naked. And so, after eating, off we went in that general direction, using back roads. Every place we would go for the rest of this journey was a place that neither of us had ever been before. It was dark and the roads were dimly lit. Edith said she started to regret our decision almost as soon as we started. We were no longer driving on the highway. We were now going through some pretty desolate parts of a town we didn't even know the name of. Every so often, we would see a person just wandering around looking like they had no place to go. Bum bum bum.
Are we going to the mountains?
Edith asked. I nodded. She said she was pretty scared to be there, and I told her she was starting to get me scared too. Nevertheless, onward we drove, on and on and on. I had not seen a human wandering aimlessly or otherwise for over 10 minutes. We were traveling through an undeveloped forest on a tiny 2-lane road. We hadn't seen any buildings for several minutes. Eventually, I found a patch of grass over by some trees alongside the road and pulled off. I turned off the car lights to lessen the chances that any cops passing by would notice us there. And then the two of us just sat there. I don't think she's in the mood. We looked around a lot nervously. Edith said that she was cold and she was shivering. I remember I moved closer and put my arm around her. She moved in close to me, but she claimed it was more to warm herself up than anything else. Oh, okay. Having invested so much time and effort into finding this private spot, neither of us wanted to give up and leave. But on the other hand, neither of us felt secure enough to stop watching the road and the forest for even a second. There was something about that place that made you feel like you weren't alone. In time, we began to relax and started cuddling in the cold of the night. The windows were soon fogged up on the inside. That's when we heard a banging on the left rear car door.
Drive!
Shouted Edith. The car's ignition is off, I reminded her. But what if it's a cop? Then we heard another loud bang, but from the right rear door.
The police don't bang on the back of your car,
said Edith, as I turned the key and started the car. Well, almost. I tried again and again. While I was trying to start the engine, Edith grabbed a cloth and wiped off the windshield so that we could at least see out the front of the car. That's when we first saw it. It wasn't a cop. It wasn't a homeless person. It was a goddamn monster. There was some sort of hairy monster standing there, silhouetted against the full moon out through the fogged up window. Although we couldn't yet make out much detail, it sure as hell wasn't a police officer or even a human being. Its hair or fur blew in the wind, and it had tall, pointed ears. The next thing we knew, it loudly threw itself face first on our car hood and slammed its muzzle right into the front windshield. It acted as though it had never been exposed to glass before, as it kept trying to bite us through the glass and grab us with its massive fucking hands. Both Edith and I agreed that it had giant-sized hands, but with very short fingers. Then a terrible squeaking or screeching noise coupled with deep cracks appearing in the windshield told us that its stubby fingers ended in long, hard, sharp nails. Or maybe a more appropriate word would be claws. That thing had impossibly hard and sharp claws. When I saw how deep the scratches were that it was leaving in the front windshield, I got the impression that it would be able to break into the car eventually if it kept trying. And try it did. Terrified, Edith screamed. I probably did too, because the monster, which had a kind of nightmare demon dog face, literally tried to bite through the fucking glass and eat us both alive. Slobber was splattered everywhere as the monster went completely insane, slamming its hands and kicking its feet. It bit off the car's antenna and the radio station turned to static. Unsuccessful at getting the glass to break for it, the monster ran around to the back of the car and attempted to open the trunk. Then it jumped up and down on the trunk, which bent the center of it and raised the edges around the outside a bit. Using this space to thrust its huge nails in, the beast tore open the car's trunk. Dude, start the fucking car. It then flung everything that had been inside, including the spare tire and tools, all over the side of the highway and in the road. By this time, Edith leaned over and was turning the ignition herself, now weeping so much that she could hardly see what she was doing. The creature stomped loudly on their car, down the windshield, down the hood, jumped on the ground, and turned to glare at us with hatred. Oh shit. In the moonlight, we finally got a good look at the thing. It was the tallest man either of us had ever seen, but it didn't wear clothing like a man. It had the head of a dog and the hands of a fucking monster. It was entirely covered in fur that was either black or at least very dark. Then this thing roared. My hands and feet were shaking so much that I wasn't sure if I was hitting the gas or the brake. But I just kept trying to start the goddamn car in the cold over and over again. Then the monster stuck its massive hands under the front end of the car and started to lift it up in the air. The car was up to its fucking chin when suddenly a miracle happened. Like a miracle out of an ancient scripture. The car roared to life. Go, go, go! A car which was then an 11-year-old 1946 Cadillac that I had rebuilt myself from scrap. It was a rear-wheel drive, so it lurched forward quickly and unexpectedly. The Dogman was bent backwards. Pedal to the metal, baby! As we drove over top of the bastard, the car bumped repeatedly and rocked from side to side as we drove forward, then sped away from the scene. Neither of us looked back. We just drove like hell. Like I said, this was an old car and it had just taken a hell of a beating. Suddenly, I noticed the brakes were spongy and barely working. I was going to have to pull over and check it out. Edith begged me to keep driving, but the damn brakes were hardly functioning, and the car wouldn't make it back home in this shape. After a few minutes of driving, when we felt certain we had gotten safely away from the Dogman, I started coasting the car to a halt along the side of the road. I don't know if I'd have done that. I got out and opened the hood. I could see the car was steaming and leaking all kinds of fluid, but I wasn't sure what I could really do to fix it since my toolkit was now thrown around on the road back there. I walked over to Edith's window and we talked about our options. This was before cell phones. We were either going to have to walk or we were going to have to try to drive this sled on icy roads with brakes that were in the process of dying. Suddenly, our decision was made for us. We heard from the distance behind us the unmistakable roar of the Dogman. I could faintly see it back in the direction we had come from. It was on its hind legs and it was running. It was limping, but it was still running. Even injured, that thing could have easily won a gold medal in the Olympics. Y'all need to go. Now. I jumped back in the car and slammed the gas pedal. Edith screamed non-stop as I sped out of the forest on the icy roads, lit only by the full moon, with no goddamn brakes to slow down on the turns. Edith said we drove for half an hour with the Dogman always the same distance behind us. It was probably more like 4 or 5 minutes, but every second felt like an hour because time slows down when you think you're gonna die. Inevitably, I eventually turned left when we should have turned right. Or maybe I just hit a patch of black ice. One way or the other, the car spun out of control. Struggling, I managed to stop its forward motion by abruptly slamming into a nearby tree sideways. Well, I guess that's one way to do it. The right rear of the caddy was now wrapped around the tree. Even if I could get the engine started again, I'd never get the car to move from that spot. So I climbed out and helped Edith do the same. Looking back, we could see the Dogman heading toward us. It was so close, we could hear its hoarse, labored breathing. Its breath looked like a steam engine chugging along. Run! I grabbed Edith's hand and pulled her with me off the road and into the forest. What? She asked me why we were going in that direction, right? I told her that there was a police station on the other side of this patch of woods. Man, I got a bad feeling about this. Edith remembered that there were also all these creepy-looking people out wandering aimlessly in that direction as well. It was one of those frying pan or fire choices. I wasn't sure I was doing the right thing, but I knew we had to keep moving. So into the forest we went. Edith kept slipping in her high heels on ice patches. She ripped her skirt when she fell on a rock. Her knee was bleeding badly and she was crying. I tried to carry her for a while, but I'm no athlete and we had to keep stopping so I could catch my breath. See what happens when you skip cardio? Edith recovered a bit from her shock, tore some cloth off her hem, and wrapped it around her knee. She wanted to try walking on it herself, and so we continued toward the police station. Emerging from the trees, we realized we had made it back to the Skid Row area on the edge of town that we don't know the name of. The situation failed to return to normal and got even more dreamlike. Both of us stepped into some sort of deep, wet mud. Edith's shoes remained in the mud behind her as she stepped out before realizing what she had done. Essentially, the same thing happened to me. And now we found ourselves out in the cold on a February night in our stocking feet, completely stuck in deep mud up over our ankles. Now, this part of the story would always set Edith off into a rant. Here we go. She wanted to know how it would be possible for this deep, wet muck to even exist on a night when all surface water was frozen. She had already slipped on ice, hurting herself several times. So how in the hell could she now be stuck in the mud? Mud is made of water, and all the water that night had turned to ice. Edith doesn't like that illogical things can exist and mess up her life. Her feet stuck in the wet mud, she still refused to accept it. There's nothing reality could throw at her that she couldn't disagree with and rant about. Edith saw one of the aimless people stumbling around who scared her earlier. She was so desperate, she waved to him and called out for help. He looked at her through zombie-like eyes and then began shambling over toward the two of us. I felt my heart leaping out of my chest. I could see the police station right there, but I couldn't make a move toward it. Being stuck in the goddamn mud with a shambling zombie approaching us from the front and a Dogman monster limping up from the rear, we were gonna die within view of the police station on Valentine's Day night. Then the strangest thing happened. The zombie man's eyes opened wide and he stared in shock at something behind us. We didn't have to guess what it was. Then an even stranger thing happened. Instead of running away, the man ran toward us, grabbing us both and helping us free our feet from the impossible mud. Immediately, the three of us hauled ass toward the police station. Behind us, the forest erupted with the noise of an immense beast hurling itself at its human prey. Then there was a big squishing sound as the monster sank deep inside the mud, way up over its knees. I turned and saw the monster absolutely freaking out, flailing this way and that, and mud flying in every direction. I realized the mud wouldn't hold the monster indefinitely, so we made it inside as quickly as we could manage. Inside, a local gentleman helped us explain our situation to the officer on duty, who treated us as if we were mud-covered lunatics. First, he called someone over to lock up our rescuer for being drunk. Then, the two of us got locked up in separate cells so that our parents could be called. Hours later, both families regrouped at the station. Edith and I were each on good terms with our parents, who were more concerned that we were covered in mud and lost our shoes than anything else. The police never believed us enough to go look to see if the monster was there. By the time we got back outside, the monster was long gone. This event led us to taking our lives more seriously. I borrowed money from Dad to get Edith a ring on the next day, and our adult lives began immediately thereafter. It's a great thing to be childlike, I would always say. But that was the day when we stopped being childish. All of our dreams could have ended that night. Edith stated, "There might not have been a you and a you," she would say, touching the kids on the nose and making eye contact. That's why whenever times got a little tough when we were kids, it's still better than what it might have been. We could have easily been killed by the Dogman. So, our family Valentine's Day was, and is always, a reminder to appreciate what you have, because it could have been much worse. And to always love the people in your life, because you never know how much longer you'll have to live. These were lessons taught by the harshest instructor of all. These were lessons taught by the Dogman. Before you go, one more thing. I want to give you a Valentine's Day thank you for watching this far into my video. Your enthusiasm fuels my passion for creating videos. I appreciate every like, comment, and share. Don't forget to hit the subscribe button for more adventures together. You make this channel special, and I can't wait to share more moments with you. Endless gratitude for your incredible support. And until next time, stay creepy!